I caught her in the act of her lies, my hands trembling, heart pounding so fast I thought it would burst. I looked at her, desperate for any sign that she felt even a shred of guilt, and I asked plainly, "How could you do this to us?" She looked back at me calmly, almost casually, like I was asking about the weather, and said, "I don't regret it. I felt nothing. It just happened, and I'm not sorry." The words hit me like a physical blow. I froze, staring at her, searching for remorse that didn't exist. My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and a cold, humiliating clarity settled over me. This marriage was over, and she didn't care. Every memory of love, every promise, every shared dream evaporated in that single moment. I realized she had crossed a line I could never repair, and her emotional detachment made the betrayal absolute. I wanted tears, anger, fear, anything, but she offered nothing. Just cold, unapologetic truth. And in that instant, I understood. Pleading, begging, or explaining wouldn't change a thing. This was the final, merciless reality. Before all of this, I thought our marriage was solid. We laughed, argued, and shared routines that felt comforting. I believed we were a team, that love meant tolerating each other's quirks and working through difficulties. There were nights we stayed up talking about dreams, weekends spent together, and small moments I thought meant everything. I clung to those memories as proof that we were strong. But looking back, the cracks were already there. I ignored the subtle coldness in her tone when I shared my feelings, dismissed the small evasions and hidden glances, and convinced myself that she was just stressed or busy. I told myself, "I'm overthinking, this isn't real." I excused her lack of intimacy, her sudden disinterest in things we once shared, and even her occasional evasive behavior as harmless quirks. The truth is, I was blind. I didn't see the emotional distance growing between us, the subtle disengagement that would eventually open the door to her betrayal. I thought love could survive anything, but sometimes denial can blind you to the very thing that destroys it. The changes started almost imperceptibly, tiny shifts I convinced myself didn't matter. She'd check her phone in secret, disappear for just a minute, or laugh at a text she didn't show me. At first, I shrugged it off. She's stressed, busy, overworked, I told myself. I wanted to believe everything was fine, so I ignored the growing unease in my gut. I didn't notice the way she stopped sharing her day, how our conversations became brief and practical instead of warm. Her laughter, once easy and bright, seemed rehearsed or forced. I explained away her subtle detachment as fatigue or personality differences. Every instinct screaming at me to pay attention, I silenced with rationalizations. Looking back, those small, seemingly insignificant moments were warnings. Each one quietly chipped away at the trust and intimacy we had built. By the time I realized how far she had drifted, the emotional space she created had become a barrier, a wall that allowed her to betray me without hesitation, without guilt, and without any sign of looking back. There were so many red flags, but I convinced myself they were nothing. When she started canceling plans at the last minute, I told myself she was just busy. When I noticed her becoming secretive about her phone or messages, I shrugged it off. She's allowed privacy, I'm overthinking. Even the tiny inconsistencies in her stories, the sudden late nights at work, the unexplained absences, I explained them all away. Every instinct in me screamed that something was wrong, but I ignored it, clinging to the idea of us. I must be imagining it, I told myself. She wouldn't hurt me on purpose. I rationalized her coldness and detachment as stress, mood swings, or harmless quirks. Each red flag I excused was a brick in the wall she was building between us, one I failed to notice until it was too late. Looking back, I see clearly how my denial allowed the betrayal to grow quietly. I ignored the patterns, silenced my gut, and waited for things to return to normal. But the truth was already forming in the shadows, and I had no idea how devastating it would become. I remember the exact moment I first felt something was wrong. It was small, almost insignificant, but it shook me to my core. She came home late, claiming it was a work meeting, and I noticed her phone buzzing constantly on the counter. She glanced at it quickly, almost nervously, and something in her eyes flickered, just a shadow of tension, but enough to make my stomach drop. I tried to dismiss it at first. I'm imagining things, I told myself. She's probably stressed or tired. But the unease wouldn't leave. I started noticing patterns, hidden texts, calls she pretended didn't exist, subtle shifts in her tone when I asked simple questions. Small details, but they added up, and my gut screamed betrayal. It was the first time I truly felt the sting of doubt. Something had shifted between us, her attention, her warmth, her honesty, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. That tiny moment of suspicion was the first crack in the foundation I thought was unshakable, and I didn't yet realize it would lead to a complete collapse. Her behavior shifted in ways I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I tried to rationalize it. She stopped initiating conversations, stopped asking about my day, stopped laughing at the little things we used to share. Even when we were in the same room, it felt like she was somewhere else, distant, detached, emotionally unavailable. The warmth that had defined our relationship was gone. When I tried to reach her, I was met with defensiveness or dismissive remarks. "You're overreacting," or "you're imagining things." But the truth was written in every gesture. The way her eyes avoided mine, the subtle closing off, the sudden disinterest in plans we once made together. She was physically present but emotionally absent, and the tension between us grew heavier every day. What hurt the most was how normalized it had become for her. I began to wonder if she even noticed the distance, or if she simply didn't care. Each cold glance, each evasive answer chipped away at my trust, and I realized this wasn't just stress or a phase. It was the slow unraveling of our marriage, a shift I had ignored for far too long, and it was leading straight to betrayal. The lies started small, almost invisible, but they never made sense. She'd tell me she was at a work event, only for a friend to mention seeing her somewhere else. She'd deny conversations we had or claim she never said something she clearly did. Every time, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she's stressed, maybe I misremembered, maybe it wasn't a big deal. But the inconsistencies kept stacking up. Texts that disappeared, calls she forgot to make, stories that changed mid-sentence. It was like reality itself was bending around her. Every explanation she offered felt rehearsed, precise, calculated. And yet, she delivered them with such calm confidence that I found myself doubting my own instincts. The worst part was how casual it became for her. I saw her brush off my concerns with subtle smirks, as if she enjoyed my confusion. That's when I realized this wasn't a series of mistakes. It was deliberate, a pattern of deception I had failed to notice until it was too late. I was trapped in a marriage where honesty no longer existed, and the person I trusted most was rewriting reality around me. By the time I pieced things together, the emotional distance between us was undeniable. It hadn't happened overnight. It crept in slowly, almost invisibly, until it became a canyon I couldn't bridge. She no longer shared her thoughts or feelings. Our conversations became shallow, functional, devoid of warmth. Even when we were in the same room, I felt invisible, like a stranger in my own home. I tried to reach her, to reconnect, but every attempt was met with impatience, dismissive remarks, or polite silence. I asked why she seemed so distant, hoping for some confession, some acknowledgement, any sign that she still cared. Her answer was always the same. "You're overthinking," or "I'm just busy, relax." But I could feel the truth beneath her words. The intimacy, the empathy, the connection we once shared, it had vanished. It wasn't just distance. It was the calm before the storm. That gap she had built slowly over months would allow her to betray me emotionally, and later physically, without guilt, without shame, and without looking back. And all the while, I kept convincing myself I was imagining it. I discovered the cheating in the most ordinary, horrifying way, through a message I wasn't supposed to see. My heart stopped before I even finished reading it. Every word screamed betrayal, casual affection, plans I'd never be part of, complete disregard for our marriage. I froze, unable to breathe, unable to move, as a cold realization settled over me. This wasn't a mistake, a slip, it was deliberate. When I confronted her, I wanted tears, guilt, anything to show she understood the devastation she'd caused. But there was nothing. Her face was calm, detached, almost smug. "I didn't mean for it to happen, and I'm not sorry," she said. Those words cut deeper than the affair itself. I realized the betrayal wasn't just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, the kind that hollowed out everything I thought I knew about love. Shock, humiliation, disbelief, all at once. How could someone you trusted so completely step outside your life and do this without a shred of remorse? Her indifference was the hardest blow. The affair hurt, but her lack of guilt made it unbearable. And in that moment, I understood. This marriage was already over. She had moved on in every way that mattered. I couldn't hold it in any longer. How could you do this to us? I demanded, voice shaking, heart hammering. I needed her to look me in the eyes and show any sign that she felt remorse. But she didn't. She looked at me calmly, like I was asking about the weather, and said, "I don't regret it. I felt nothing. It just happened, and I'm not sorry." Time froze. Every hope I had, hope for guilt, for apology, for understanding, shattered in that instant. I searched her eyes for even a flicker of shame, but there was nothing. Her calm, unshakable detachment was a wall I couldn't break. I tried to reason, to remind her of us, of everything we shared, but she waved me off. "You're overreacting. It didn't mean anything. I don't owe you anything," she said, like it was obvious. The humiliation, the shock, the icy clarity of betrayal slammed into me all at once. This marriage was over, and she felt nothing. No apology, no guilt, just the final, merciless truth. Her lack of guilt was worse than the affair itself. I expected anger, shame, even a flicker of remorse, but there was nothing. Just calm, almost casual acceptance of what she'd done. "I don't feel bad," she said, shrugging as if my devastation meant nothing. "It's already done. I don't owe you explanations or guilt." Her words cut deeper than the betrayal itself. I searched her eyes, desperate for emotion, any sign she understood the destruction she caused. But her gaze was empty, sharp, unyielding. She treated the entire ordeal as a minor inconvenience, something that happened and was immediately behind her. She didn't flinch at my tears, didn't waver when I pleaded for understanding, didn't attempt justification beyond cold rationalizations. Then it hit me. She could betray without conscience, abandon without regret. All the small warning signs I'd ignored, the subtle changes I excused, everything led to this chilling reality. This wasn't just cheating. It was emotional death, the final, merciless confirmation that some people will never feel remorse, no matter how much you love them. I collapsed emotionally in ways I hadn't expected. The shock had faded, leaving a hollow ache that filled every corner of my chest. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and empty all at once. Every memory, every laugh, every promise, every dream we had shared, twisted painfully in my mind, now tainted by the knowledge that none of it mattered to her. I kept replaying her words. "I don't feel bad. It just happened. I don't owe you anything." Each repetition was like a hammer striking my chest, stripping away the denial I had clung to for months. Numbness gave way to anger, anger to despair, and back again. I wanted to scream, to beg, to make her understand the devastation she had caused, but I knew it would be useless. For the first time, I saw how much I had been giving to someone incapable of empathy. My love, my trust, my energy, wasted on a person who didn't value them. The collapse wasn't just grief, it was awakening. I realized that holding on, pleading, or explaining would never bring her remorse. The marriage I fought for was gone, and she didn't care. The decision to stop chasing her didn't come quickly. It came in the quiet moments after the confrontation, when the adrenaline faded and only the cold reality remained. I realized I had been running after someone who had no intention of turning back. Every plea, every attempt to reason, every hope for an apology was met with emptiness. Chasing her only deepened my pain. Sitting alone, I let myself feel the full weight of what she'd done and what she would never feel. I understood that I couldn't change her, couldn't force guilt, couldn't revive a love that existed only in my mind. That clarity, as painful as it was, brought relief. For the first time in months, I felt control returning, not over her, but over myself. I decided I would stop explaining, stop justifying, stop begging for recognition of the harm she caused. My energy, my love, my respect, they belonged to me, not to someone incapable of empathy. It wasn't immediate healing, but it was the first step toward reclaiming my dignity and my life. Distance became my shield. I stopped expecting her to care, stopped hoping she'd change, and stopped looking for signs of remorse. Every interaction became transactional, stripped of emotion. Whenever she tried to pull me back into arguments or justifications, I stepped further away. I learned to listen without reacting, to feel without collapsing, to protect myself from the damage she no longer seemed capable of recognizing. Detachment didn't happen overnight. At first, it felt hollow, painful, almost like giving up. But gradually, it became liberation. I stopped measuring my worth by her actions, stopped letting her indifference define my emotions. I began to see the marriage for what it really was, a bond poisoned by her lack of empathy and deliberate choices. With distance, I found clarity. The chains that had bound me to her guiltless betrayal loosened. I no longer carried the weight of her choices. Instead, I focused on myself, on reclaiming the life and dignity I had been surrendering in silent hope that she might feel something she never would. Walking away emotionally became the first act of true self-respect. Looking back, I see everything clearly now. Cheating hurts, but cheating without guilt is the final betrayal. Her affair wasn't just a physical act. It was the emotional death of our marriage, a reminder that love without empathy is hollow. I wasted months hoping she would feel remorse, that she would recognize the pain she caused, but some people simply don't. Believing otherwise only prolongs suffering. The lesson I learned, and the advice I wish I could give my younger self, is this: when someone cheats and shows no guilt, believe them. Don't waste your energy explaining, pleading, or begging for acknowledgement. Self-respect begins when you stop trying to force someone to care, when you step back and reclaim your own dignity. It's painful, humiliating, but liberating. I stopped chasing, I stopped explaining, and slowly, I began to rebuild myself. Love without accountability is emotional abandonment. Protecting your heart is not weakness, it's survival. Walking away from someone incapable of remorse is not giving up. It's the bravest act of respect you can offer yourself.